Hi, my name is Matthew Belisario. Thanks for coming by the Belisario Sonic YouTube channel. I'm coming to you from the heart of the Deep South on the outskirts of Birmingham, Alabama. And we're talking about music, records, doing record reviews, interviews, and more. Thanks for coming by the channel. I appreciate you guys supporting the channel, giving the thumbs up, and leaving your comments. We're keeping great music alive together, one review at a time, one share at a time by you guys out there. Today, I have a little bit of a different video, and occasionally I will do equipment videos. I've done one on the Fluence RT85 and RT85, and I've done one on my Vincent Faux 701 phono stage. Today I'm going to be talking about my Yamaha HS8 speakers, powered speakers, and why they may or may not be good for you. So this right here is a equipment video, and I think this might help people out there who are looking to possibly get back into vinyl records with a mid-fi system, or somebody new getting into vinyl records that wants to go from a very inexpensive system to perhaps just a little bit more of a robust system. I consider these speakers, they're near-field monitors, and they work very well in my environment, but there are some caveats. And so I wanted to talk about these today. Leave your comments, let me know what you guys like for bookshelf speakers, because that's kind of where these particular near-field monitors shine. They are bi-amped powered monitors. And so if you look over here, this is the Yamaha HS8, and it is a bi-amped powered monitor. These are about 13 or 14 years old. I've had them for a while, and I first bought them for use in my little studio here in my home. And I started mixing with my headphones a lot, and I was just getting really good results with my headphones, and these became, they weren't used very often. So I moved them into this room as listening speakers in my listening room here. And with the setup that I have, they work very well. So I want to talk about that today. These might also work very well for you, providing you know how they're used, you know what their strong points are, what their weak points are. So we're going to talk about that today. These are 120 watt speakers. They have built-in amplifier. Okay, so you have a 75 watt low frequency amplifier, and you have a 45 watt high frequency amplifier. So when you look at this, that's a total power of 120 watts per speaker. It's plenty for an average size bedroom or listening room. No problem with volume whatsoever. These are they're half up. So if you look here at the volume knob here at 4 dB setting, mine are straight up and down. I'm going to talk about how these are connected because it's kind of very important on how you're going to use these. But let's talk a little bit about the dimensions here, because I think this is kind of important as to where you can place these. These are over almost 15.5 inches high, and they are almost 10 inches wide. They're fairly deep, 13.1 inches deep, and they weigh 22.5 pounds. So they're robust speakers. It does require a decent shelf to put them on, or it requires a stand or something to put them on that can support 22.5 pounds. I'm going to talk about placement here in a moment, but let's take a look at the connections here, because this is also really cool. You've got a 1/4 inch and a 1/4 inch TRS input and an XLR input that gives you a couple of easy options for connection. These are active speakers though, so you need a phono preamp to go into them. So I'm going to talk about that here in a moment, how I have mine connected. Also, there's no standby mode on these. It's an on and off switch. And I have mine connected up to a power conditioner with switches on the front of it that I turn the speakers on and off with. So otherwise you have to go to the back of each speaker and turn them off. So something to be aware of there. Now you have on these, let me show you how I have these connected here, because it's kind of important as to whether or not these are going to work for you, because if you have to go to the back of the speaker to adjust the volume all the time, you're going to probably not want to do that. In this room here, I have these going to, they are connected up to this board here. This is a Mackie Pro board, and I have the have that coming off of my Vincent Faux 701 phono stage here. So that is where where that's coming from. It comes from my turntable, or my Fluence RT85 with the Audiophone Blue, goes into my Vincent here, and then comes out of the Vincent, and it goes over to my board here on these thick cables here. They are RCA cables, and it goes in to my tape input on my board. That's set at mid-level here, and then I simply use my main outs going to my Yamaha HS8s on the XLRs, okay? So in this room, I listen to everything about the same volume, which is usually right at unity. If it's a hot cut, I may have to bring it down just a little bit, but I never go below a -5 on here, okay? So for me, the volume adjustment is very, very slight. I don't mess with it a whole lot. Now, another reason I use this board is because I have my SACD player plugged in here, left and right, and that allows me to do comparisons between my CD or SACD and my vinyl. So I can bring those up, bring the volume down on the record, and vice versa, and I can have a nice mixing ability here on this board. One other cool thing about this board that you don't find on a lot of boards anymore like this size is it does have a stereographic EQ. Now, I don't use that EQ very often. You can see it's almost flat all the way across. So I don't mess with that a whole lot, but it does give me the ability if I want to. I listen to a lot of jazz in this room, so if I want to put on something else where I want to change the EQ a little bit, I can do that. It gives me the ability to do that. Obviously, my effects are off. You can see those are down, completely bypassed, so there are no effects being used. You wouldn't want that. So that's how I have this connected. So if I want to power them on, I have a power unit down below. I power my speakers on. I go through this board here, and then I have my volume adjustment from my turntable or my CD player right here on the main outs, and that varies very little. One thing you want to be aware of with these speakers, they are very flat speakers. These are known for their not coloring the sound, which I like. I prefer. I do not want these speakers to color my sound in this room. I want the sound of the record or the sound of the SACD or CD, whatever I'm playing. I want to hear the music as it is on those mediums. I don't want it to be colored. Other people who like certain speakers that color the sound a certain way may find these to be a bit dry. Personally, I like the way they sound, especially with this particular setup with that Vincent Faux 701 that greatly improved my sound, where I had to ship Monty 2 before, which was a nice little phono stage, but this is about 4 times the cost of that, and it sounds much, much better. Now, Yamaha states that the mid-range and the tweeter are crossed over at about 2 kilohertz. But I went online, I was looking at different technical reviewers, and people are showing the mid-range is crossed over steeply at around 1.7 kilohertz, and the tweeter begins to roll off at an equal rate at about 2.3 kilohertz. But if you average those two out, it comes out to around 2 kilohertz or so. Regardless of that, this is a really nice sounding speaker for the money. You can get a pair of these when they're on sale for $600. I don't think you're going to get a better speaker set with built-in amplifiers, powered speakers for that price, personally. Leave your comments and let me know, though, what you think. Now let's talk about the benefits of these speakers, okay? For those of you out there that want a simple setup, going with powered speakers means you're going to probably get a step up in performance from some very cheap speakers you have. If you're using a really cheap, regular powered speakers like computer speakers or something like that, these are going to be much more robust. They're going to sound much better. If you're using a really cheap turntable with built-in speakers, those kind of things, I would get rid of that kind of stuff. But for those of you who have a $300 turntable and a up mid-fi system, these speakers I think may work very well for you, and it eliminates the need for an external amp, which is a benefit and something to be concerned about, because if you buy these Yamahas, you are stuck with those built-in amps. You get what you get. that 120 watt, 75 watt low frequency, and your 45 watt high frequency. So you cannot use an amplifier to power these speakers. They are powered speakers. So if you ever want to go to an amplifier that's separate, you'll have to get other speakers. So you have simplicity there for those of you that want to have the speakers powered. You don't have to mess with another amp. For the price, $600, you get the built-in amplifiers and these nice speakers that have 8-inch woofer and a 1-inch tweeter here with rear porting. We're going to talk about that. So $600 for a pair of these when they're on sale is very hard to beat in my opinion. Space, let's talk about space. While these are robust speakers, they're still relatively easy to fit in any size room, and they do offer a nice full spectrum sound without taking up a whole lot of space. Again, you're talking about 15.5 inches high, 10 inches wide, almost 13 inches deep. One thing, these are kind of deep at 13 inches, but that rear port that's ported at 45 hertz, having that depth does help you get nice bass. These speakers are known for having a nice bass presence. So sound quality, these are nice mid-tier speakers. They're designed not to color your music. Again, these are made for mixing and mastering in a small studio. And these will only leave your cartridge that you're using, your turntable and your phono stage. Those are going to be the only thing that's really going to color your the sound. These are going to be very flat, very true. That's what I do like about them, and they sound great for jazz. So they're full presence. For those who love fat bass tone, these speakers do shine. The rear bass porting gives the bass a nice punch, and when you place them correctly in your room, the bass sound is very good. It still has nice top end presence from that 1-inch tweeter dome, and the mids are somewhat forward, I think, on these, maybe just a little bit. But I think most people are going to find that these speakers work well with pretty much any genre of music. And there really is full range of any bookshelf speaker that you're going to get anywhere near this price range, okay? Let's talk about the EQ room adjustment. You have a couple of different adjustments on the back of these speakers. So let's go back here and take a look at this again. Let me show you what we have here. You've got a room control adjustment and a high trim switch, okay? What that room control is going to do for you is it is going to allow you to adjust the speaker's low frequency response. So depending on where you place these speakers, how much room you have behind them in the wall or whatever barrier you have behind the speaker is it's going to affect your bass sound because they're rear ported. And so you're able to, if you have these close to the wall or closer to the wall, you're going to get more bass out of them. And so if you're in a small room and you have to have them fairly close, I wouldn't put these any closer than probably 5 inches to the wall, okay? The closer you get, the more bass you have, and you're going to have to adjust that room control switch or possibly have to use it. And what that will do is bring that bass down by 2 dB or 4 dB depending on that switch, okay? So if you go take a look here at the switch, you'll see that you can set that how you want to set it if you want to reduce your bass. Me, I have them set, both of these switches set at 0, so they're not doing anything. I find that the flat, the way these speakers sound in this room is fine. Now you also have a ability to adjust your going back to this, your high trim switch. This is really cool as well because if you want a little more top end above that 2K range, you're going to be able to boost it by 2 dB. So it'll just give you a little bit more high end presence. However, if you're getting a little too much, you can lower it by a couple of dB. So this is really nice for those that don't have any kind of EQ. Kind of gives you something there that you can play with a little bit. I recommend that you play with these switches, listen to the same couple of records over and see what you like. This is a personal preference, but it will vary by room and it's going to vary by where you have these speakers placed. So let's talk about let's go back here. Let's talk about the cons, okay? The cons of having this particular speaker, the volume adjustment can be tedious if you don't have some kind of external volume control. or if you listen to your records at the same volume all the time, it may not be that big of a deal. But if you want to turn it down late at night, you want to bring it down a little bit. You want to have some kind of external volume control to feed these speakers. So that's very important. You don't want to have to, unless they're in an easy place to get to where you can reach behind them and adjust the volume. I would have some kind of an external way like this board or something else. Again, you can't connect an external power amplifier to them, so be aware of that what you get is what you have. These are robust speakers. They weigh 22.5 pounds each, so make sure you have sturdy shelves or stands, and make sure that you've got adequate room for that 13-inch depth with that extra spacing behind them for the rear port. You don't want to get them too close to the wall. Flat voicing, again, I see this as a pro. Some people who like speakers with particular voicing characteristics may find these speakers to be a bit dry. For me, I think they sound fantastic, especially where I listen to like 75% jazz records. I think they sound wonderful. I don't want coloring in this particular environment. Let's talk about a couple of important facts. Let's talk about this rear bass porting a little bit more, because this really works well if you have them placed properly. You want to keep them at least a few inches off the wall. I would say 4 or 5 inches minimum, okay? And of course, it depends on how loud you turn these up. For me, these are set halfway up on the volume, and I put the board at unity or close to unity. And it's plenty of volume for this room. I do not need to turn them up anymore. So volume's not a problem. On the other hand, you don't want to use these in a huge room, because with that rear porting, if you get them too far out, more than a couple of feet away from the wall, you're probably not going to have very good bass response, okay? So while the porting does provide deeper bass than non-ported designs, if you block the port, you're going to negatively impact the performance. And if you bring the speakers way out far into the room, you're also going to negatively impact the performance. So proper placement is critical. You want adequate space behind the speaker. And if you're going to have the speaker out further in the room, you're probably going to want a front ported speaker. General rule of thumb on this, I would say typically starting out at 4 to 6 inches away from the wall and moving it out further depending on where you want the speaker placed and the sound. You're just going to have to play with it, because you don't want to have bloated, exaggerated bass. And again, you do have that switch there to help you with that, where you can bring that bass down 2 or 4 dB. But you don't want to have to use that if you don't have to. Now, another thing that I want to stress about these speakers is they are near-field speakers, okay? So what does that mean? Near-field speaker means it's meant to be listened to fairly close, okay? That doesn't mean you have to have your face buried in them, but I would say that you don't want these more than maybe 5 or 6 feet away from your listening position, and you want these kind of angled, okay, towards you, so that you're sitting in a sweet spot. So you want like an equilateral triangle. About the monitors, you want to place them up probably, at least 3 or 4 feet apart, up to about 6 feet apart. And you want them at least, again, I would say 4 to 6 inches away from the wall. You want them at an equidistant ear height, okay? So where I'm sitting right now, the speakers are right at my ears. When I'm sitting back here, my ears are right between the tweeter and the bass cone there. So you can really, that's very important. And they're kind of turned in just a little bit. I don't know if you can see it there, but they are turned in just a little bit. So when I'm sitting back here about 5 feet away from these speakers, they're aimed, at an angle towards me. When I'm sitting back here, they're aimed at an angle, and they sound very good. So you want to make sure that they're equidistant. You're sitting in between them about 3 to 5 feet away. And this speaker is excellent for intimate listening experience at low volume or a higher volume. So they don't have to be loud to sound good. They can, again, I got mine set at 4 dB straight up and down, and I got the mixer coming out at unity, coming out right out of my phono stage. It sounds fantastic. Now, It's going to vary a little bit based on your phono stage, what the output is, that kind of thing, and your cartridge output, things like that can definitely change the way these sound. So you want to be aware of that. So overall, I think these are nice mid-tier speakers for the price. I don't think you're going to get much better if you want to spend $600, okay? So if you got yourself a, $300, $500, up to about $700 or $800 turntable, you've got like a phono stage like mine that costs you $500 to $800, up to a grand maybe, and you want something that's a bookshelf speaker at a reasonable price. Again, a pair of these is going to cost you between $600 and $700. I think these are a good fit if you're in a small to medium sized room. And again, these are near field speakers, so you're going to be sitting up fairly close to these. These aren't made for a big room. You need bigger speakers for a bigger room, and different type of speakers for a bigger room. You wouldn't want near field speakers for a big room. They just aren't going to sound well, okay? So I wanted to let you guys just kind of give you a synopsis of why I have these speakers. They're probably not very commonly used for those of you who are listening to records, but I just think that these may fit well for some people's listening rooms and things like that. So that's why I did this video. And I would definitely, if you're looking in this particular price range and in this type of setting, I think that these might be something that are worth looking at for sure. The Yamaha HS8 speakers. I appreciate you guys joining me. Give the thumbs up. Share the video with other people, but I'll have a lot of reviews coming your way. I still got a lot of jazz records to review here, and I will see you soon. Happy listening out there. Take care.